Close this down and we'll take a look at Fraser's lovely build, which Fraser, I think your build is so fantastic. So one of the coolest things about Fraser's build, you guys, and I think we're going to go a little over time here today, but that's probably okay. A, B, C, D, there we are. So one of the coolest things about Fraser's build, you guys, is it's on a boat. I'm assuming, I don't know if it's a yacht or an old work boat, like an old fishing boat, but it's obviously pretty big, and I don't know if it's, I've seen a couple other boat rocket mass heaters, but Fraser, I've got to say yours is, I think, the coolest I've seen, and definitely the largest. So here is Fraser's build, and my mug is right in the way. I'll move myself over here, and as you can see, he's got this fantastic cob covered, plastered build. It's a batch box. He built it using Peter's dimensions and Peter's plans for the most part, but he does have a half barrel bench here built using half barrels, and we'll just go through this pretty quickly. We'll take a look at it sort of in a hurry. He's got his secondary airpiece there. And I don't remember, it looked like you did use some ceramic fiberboard, Fraser, for the interior here, or something like that. So you do have an insulated burn chamber. Gorgeous build. 300 degrees Celsius on his bell, which I think is fantastic. You can see it glowing. Out at the end of the bench, moisture. And you can see this moisture here at his clean out. And so this is exactly what we talked about a minute ago. And Ben Fountain, I can see your chat there, and he says, same as a car having water sputtering from the exhaust then. And that's exactly right. And so Fraser, what you're experiencing here is exactly what we talked about. The heater is going to move that moisture towards the exhaust as you burn. But if the very end of that stove is always cool, it will always condense there. Now, if the inside of the bell is all masonry, then you have quite a bit of absorption in that masonry before that manifests as drips. In other words, the brick and the mortar and the stone on top or whatever it is, all those things can absorb that moisture. But Fraser, in the case of your build, it's a half barrel system. So the whole top of the internals of this bench are all steel. So any condensation in there is going to instantly run down to the bottom of that steel. Two things, it makes it more difficult for it to re-entrain in the gas because now it's down in the cold area. And of course it just runs freely, so you get a lot of moisture. So there's nothing wrong with this, Fraser. This is absolutely normal and expected behavior. But some things you could do to remedy it if you'd like to is you could maybe add some insulation at the end of the bench, either inside or outside, trying to keep it warm down there and maintain the heat in that end of the bench above your dew point. Overall, though, I think I probably wouldn't worry too much about it. It doesn't look like it's ever going to, I imagine what it's happening here is it's soaking into your plaster and then kind of being let into the air. I'd be surprised if you got enough water to make a wet spot on the floor, although that is possible. But hopefully that answers your question with regards to that moisture. So here's the beginnings of the build, and you can see what I'm talking about here. Is just it's all steel. And so that condensation is going to manifest, as moisture that shows up sort of at the bottom of that build because it has to run down the sides. So here's the build. I love that he's got this steel container for the core. It's kind of akin to my aluminum series idea. It's sort of where I was headed when I was first building those. Like, wow, you can just stick this thing in a metal bell and away you go and put all the mass downstream. It's a really neat way to do a heater that doesn't take up much space for the front end. In something like a ship, you're probably limited with how much mass you can, put in the boat because of listing. You spoke about that a little bit. And so I thought this was a really neat way to go. So Fraser, my respect for your build. I think it's a lovely build. It shows a lot of imagination and a lot of outside of the box thinking. And overall, I just think it's fantastic. I don't see a single issue with it. And yeah, you know, your exhaust is here behind your bell, so you do get some exhaust enhancement from the proximity to the bell. But what that means is that far end of your bench where you have that right angle is going to be pretty cool, and so you will get that condensation. Perhaps there's a way for you to incorporate the feature we talked about earlier in the chat with the exhaust pickup running inside the bell all the way down to that far end. I know that can be difficult with the half barrels because there isn't a lot of room in there, so that may not be an option for you, and you might not be interested in going back in there at this point. I totally understand. But those are my thoughts, and that's why it's doing what it's doing now. I would imagine that if you cooked yourself out of the ship by burning this thing for 2 days hard and hot, you could probably get that thing dry. But as soon as it cooled off again, you'd have the same issues again. So I don't know that there's any point in doing that. I think probably insulating that end of the bench is probably your best bet.